Welcome back to the final part of Legend of Mana. It's been a
Right.
while. A lot of things have happened. So anyway, I'm just showcasing here for
Again,
context
the
fact that all the quests have been completed. Go ahead, Joe.
I'll be quite honest. The last Jumi, the Jumi story, while definitely it has its problems, and I did mention some confusions I had, overall it was a satisfying enough conclusion, although I do have to wonder, did like every Jumi except for Sandra survive?
Pretty much.
So, how about that? I guess that's the ultimate karma. Sandra?
It's the irony, kind of like.
Yep. Oh, right,
Also,
these crabs.
yeah, remember, the crabs were the ones that Captain Tusk gave to me. Don't worry, they actually respawn if you enter the room again. So.
Oh.
Anyway,
and I see the pause. Sorry it took me so long to mention this, but I see the pause menu was taking inspiration from the Tomb Raider games.
In what way?
Instead of a simple list, there's a whole circle of
that's only for
used for items.
That's only for the data log thing. Here I'm just showcasing a bit what the artifacts are. Don't worry, you don't have to read this stuff. Essentially, each artifact that I mentioned comes with a little description that kind of build a bit of lore and how the artifact is connected to the actual location that it will spawn.
I do realize that this is the first time we've ever been in this room in a while.
Yeah, I think it's only in one of the initial parts, but mostly because I know that this stuff is a data log anyway at the very end. So
were you gonna ask me something, Tio?
Unless it's really important, like I wouldn't have showcased. But yeah, Dweebs, no, I was just mentioning that the circle thing is only for this data log thing. The pause menu instead is the classic. Icon on the right and other options on the left.
Yeah, because I don't think I've seen any other game series do that. Instead of just a simple list, you have a list.
Depends. Some of them use
models.
Some of them use like the circle or hexagon thing that you choose with the analog stick. Others use instead of a more simplistic pause menu, but no, I don't remember exactly that kind of the one that you described for Tomb Raider.
Yeah, speaking of Tomb Raider,
there was the Atlantis video game made by Disney Interactive, but that one had a similar menu, I think.
On the subject of Tomb Raider, while this is going on, and since they're owned by Square Enix now, I was looking into its history, and apparently Tomb Raider was actually quite a success in Japan. At least to the point where quite a lot of the games were localized for over there.
Well, there's the thing, Dweebs, also. Surprisingly enough, a good chunk of Western kind of like games under Square Enix have been successful in Japan. Life is Strange is the other one.
Remember, this was before Idol Skull.
The buyout. Well, that also depends. Well, that also depends. Again, Japan has some really weird taste when it comes to game. Sometimes they don't like stuff that's been, universally praised in the West. Other times they really like something that the West doesn't really care about.
I'm honestly, one surprise for me was how popular LA Noire was over there.
Yeah, I guess they have like a bone for this type of Western culture.
It's because of Japan really loves their murder mystery stuff.
True, hence why Ace Attorney's a big hit over there.
I did see a lot of LA Noire while I was over there.
Yeah, well, that was Japanese made in the first place.
LA
Noire's a Western made game.
It fits with the
So I guess that's also why Square Enix wanted to be the publisher for Murder Soul Suspect, despite the fact we was pretty bad.
Shiri, when you say you saw LA Noire, do you mean you saw like copies of the newer versions?
A lot of posters, copies, just a lot of general promotion for it.
Okay, which is interesting. I don't think Rockstar games would be all that popular over there, but...
Oh, you'd be surprised. In fact, I think the Arkham games were actually pretty popular in Japan, too.
Well, you're mentioning Rockstar, not just open world. But if I recall correctly, there is kind of like there is kind of like a fan base for the GTA games in Japan. I just don't remember how.
Which is interesting, because Western...
I mean, Yakuza is a thing, so it's no big surprise.
It's almost like a general rule... For the most part, there are exceptions, obviously, but there's a general rule that Japanese buyers only really seem to go for stuff made in their own country. So to see stuff made in the West be popular over there, though usually that's a case of the Western developers have to hide anything Western in their games.
The thing with Japan is that they're very xenophobic still. Like, I mean...
Hence, you know,
Well, it's also kind of an issue over here as well, where, yeah, I mean, a large proportion of games are made by the Japanese, but only rarely do you see the most Japanese games, and I mean incredibly Japanese games.
Yeah,
It's at the end of the day, it's a cultural barrier and its work. Essentially.
You know, I remember when Crash got localized over there. They had to practically anything that had a Roman letter in it. They had to replace it with a Japanese one.
Yeah.
It's the same for Spyro Dweebs, the whole Reaped
Yeah, look
thing
how well
actually-
Spyro turned out over there.
Yeah, but one of those games turned out better in Japan than the other, I'll just say that right now.
Yeah, at least with Crash, it was just a cultural translation. With Spyro, they had to change the
Anyway,
It was a
camera.
butchery.
Anyway, Jova, these compendium also showcase the actual portraits of the characters. So while they're not exactly detailed because of a 480p, I think they're a bit more understandable. I guess.
yeah, they're much...
Yeah.
They're much better, and I will admit this guide is, you know, more helpful, I guess, in garnering the character.
Still, it's a data log at the end of the day, so
Yeah.
I didn't bother to actually pull in, otherwise we will be here all day anyway.
I will say this, though, I feel like some of the details they mentioned in these weren't even mentioned in the game, like it's a little bit of extra stuff. Or who knows, maybe it was stuff that they were trying to get into the game, but it got rushed.
Sometimes it's for the lore building, sorry. Sometimes it's just for a joke similar to the Cactus Diaries.
And in other
thing.
cases, it's probably stuff that they couldn't make it in because,
Yeah.
rushed.
But yeah, there's another cool thing is the fact that essentially these showcase essentially every character that you met. There are yes, Dweebs?
You didn't tell me we had to do reading in this part.
That's exactly why we're not doing, including some of the mini bosses that we also fought.
I will say that, seeing them up close here and there, I can at least decipher what they are a lot better than
Well,
I
they're
could
supposed to be, yeah.
You know what I mean? Than I could with just their portraits.
Also, yeah, Self apparently has fins, poor feet. But whatever.
Uh-huh.
And there you go, I think that's almost it, I think.
There's a lot... Oh, right.
Yeah, again, it states
Oh,
also some
right!
of
The mummy professor! When's she gonna do something?
No, she's not.
So we have a professor...
The mummy from the 2017 movie did more.
Hold on. Her major role essentially was in that quest tied to the Dragon Story arc, where she was supervising the students who were gathering ingredients for the potions.
I mean, we've done stuff with the other professors. I mean, you have a living mummy as a professor. How do you not do something with her? In a JRPG, no less.
That's also the problem, as I mentioned in our part, Jova, the fact that these fantasy universe throws in like a gajillion different races and just doesn't know how to make them, coexist.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if they didn't go to the trouble of giving her own unique, sprite, different artwork and everything, but they did. Like, well, at least do something. It's like, heck, even with something like, say, Layton, yes, there are a butt ton of characters, and they may not all get the best of character, but they're always all there to do something in, a noticeable enough amount. Whereas with this mummy character, it's kind of a shame. She has an interesting character design, but nothing's really done with her. It's like if you had a dragon.
Say goodbye to our house.
Right.
Bye, house.
Bye, little cactus.
Yeah, unfortunately for this final quest, you don't get.
We're not gonna miss it.
I mean, I
Alright, time to actually enter the fucking tree of mana.
I'm surprised you didn't call the... I know it's probably an obscure pun, but I'm surprised you didn't call the cactus Jack or something.
Mm-hmm.
Cactus Jack, I heard it somewhere else.
It's a wrestler. One of the wrestler's personas.
Anyway, just to cap things off, not using that mummy, it's like if you had like this cool looking exclusive that looks good, but then you just do nothing or cancel it, like Scalebound.
And look at that, we're at the beginning of a game, essentially where it started.
Nothing the parallel over, to be honest. One's a video game, the other's just a singular character.
Jova, that thing is the actual tree of mana.
Is it gonna turn out that we're in some loop and this has all just been a dream leading up to the beginning and then it's a cycle?
Not quite, but it's not completely similar. Anyway, go ahead,
hey, Pokio.
Yeah.
Pedro?
Oh,
sorry. I forgot that I was playing this guy, sorry.
Plot twist, this was directed by Terrence Malick.
The mana goddess is the light, and thus she could not see herself.
The mana goddess is evil, isn't she?
She used her light to outline herself in shadow. Somehow. Her visions began the creation of this universe. Everything in the world has a common beginning. Her light. But the desire to know oneself became shadow and separated us.
Is this the warrior comic?
Look, dude, we don't care. Can we move on to the final dungeon already, please? Words are your powers. The goddess will speak to you with her power. No, please, no. I've already enough of fucking goddesses and evil goddesses. if you know you can handle that power, then proceed.
But yeah, Joe, I think it's a good time to mention here, because the game's certainly not going to explain you. It's not like 100% confirmed, but essentially it's what every player has ultimately, rationalized with what the game is. Also, for context, the Mana Tree dungeon is fine. It's not too maze-like, but it's just there. Anyway.
What's even the big dilemma of this dungeon?
Essentially you need to get to the top and confront the Mana Goddess to see how she is.
I mean, I guess what's weird is, at best, maybe one of the storylines said that the Mana Goddess demands a sacrifice, but otherwise...
Not just that. If you don't remember, the quest that was right after one of the major story arcs, the one where the Sproutling was trapped inside the dream, stated that the Mana Tree needs to be reborn somehow, and they were playing. So that means that the goddess kinda has to die in the process.
Why?
Because of the cycle of rejuvenation, Jova. But my point is this. If you pay attention also to the opening and to the dialogue of some of the NPCs, you will probably realize that this essentially is a dying world. We have witnessed, essentially, some of its last moment, but not in a sense, Jova, that, like you said, it's not in a sense that, it's a cycle that goes on and repeats. It's only this specific thing. Essentially, supposedly, the world has ended, and the Mana Goddess used her last strength to have the player character, aka me, actually had the power, thanks to the artifact, to rebuild temporarily the world, so that the Mana Tree could be regenerated temporarily in this state, and thus can be reborn, and the world can be saved properly.
So, wait, so we have to kill her even though it's her plan?
Essentially, yeah. Again, it's a whole thing about being reborn and having to die in the process. It's the Phoenix cycle, Joe.
So her plan is essentially...
But it's not in a sense of a time loop, more like in a progression of through cycle, through death and rebirth. Basically, just what I told you, Jova. Cycles that showcase the world beginning and being destroyed anew. And supposedly this is the one where you break it, basically, by restoring to the original form. But again, the sad part is that this stuff is, it is mentioned in the game, but you need to really pay attention to put the pieces back together at the right point. And again, I don't think this ending fits the whole narrative, because unlike in a lot of games where your choices normally matter, this is a case where you're seeing the same ending regardless of what you do, basically. Yeah. What other characters that you met during your journey actually do right now, like Where Are They Now epilogue, but sadly it's not the case.
That's sort of the issue. It's from what I'm understanding, it's either this world was dead and you're essentially replaying its memories and you're just bringing it to its natural conclusion.
Until the breaking point at which you trigger the event that gets the Mana Tree restored.
Here's the thing though. Is it gonna just turn into how the game started in the first place? Is my worry.
No, surprisingly no. It's similar to, I don't know if you remember this point, but we'll get it again sometime, about Eternal Sonata, of the sense that the world is trapped in a cycle, but when the key player enter, in that case Chopin, in this case the player, things change permanently from that point on.
Really? So, do we get anything notable definitely telling us that, though, or is it essentially just a word of text, though?
No, I mean, it's still pretty much a Gynax ending when you really get down to it, but it's pretty clear what's going on when you see it. So it's just that I wish it was told more. I mean, I don't, again, like I mentioned, I don't hate the game because of it. I'm much more tolerant, but I could easily see why someone would be turned down by a thing like this.
To sum it up like this is a bit like the book series, The Chronicles.
It's turned off too, not turned down. It's turned off.
Well, okay.
Well,
turned off by this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is comparable to the book series, The Chronicles of Narnia, where, okay, sorry to spoil you this of the finale novel, but essentially the plot twist is that by book number 7, mind you, the book number 7 was not originally planned, and Chronicles of Narnia is essentially a book series where the chronology of when the books were actually produced is completely out of whack with the books when they were actually made.
I also will have a lot of things to talk about Narnia, but when we'll get to Prince Caspian. Actually get it as the next movie pick, but go ahead, Jova.
Yeah, here's the thing about the Chronicles of Narnia, essentially. We don't know if they're ever gonna get to, doing the 7th and final book, but here's the thing. Chronicles of Narnia is essentially a whimsical, well, relatively speaking whimsical, there's a lot of brutal stuff, but never mind this. It's essentially a whimsical and magical world thing going on. Except not quite, because all those kids in pretty much every book, because pretty much the protagonist of each one is a kid or a teenager.
The 2 brothers and 2 sisters,
yeah. The 2 brothers and 2 sisters, heck, the kid character from The Boy and His Horse, the young nephew from The Magician's Nephew. Here's the thing, by the end...
Mirror, basically.
Oh, no. Here's the thing. By the end of the 7th book, essentially the 7th book is about Aslan having to deal with a fake Aslan played by a donkey. Essentially, the reveal is that all these kids in the book series were dead from a nuclear explosion. That's right, these kids died during World War II. Where
that's the thing. Basically, at that point, it's time to you, but Narnia is basically the afterlife.
Yep. So yeah, that's right. All this whimsical stuff, where may I remind you, people do die pretty brutal deaths in, is actually some.
Hold on, Jova. We're about to get. Shiri, can you read this dread text? All right, Pedro, take over.
Not really. No, go.
I am the light. I am the darkness. Half of myself is what you have fought in the past. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I create, I destroy, and I create again. I am love, and I am also God, apparently. Not all of me is just. Oh, stop it with your fucking bullshit philosophy and come out.
Yep, this is definitely a Kingdom Hearts game.
Pedro, it's better than Bunivelze. Come on.
How come you guys aren't pissed off at all the Squares games then?
Twibs. I call out Kingdom Hearts plenty on its dialogue. I do come back.
Yeah, we do. We do this.
Not just Kingdom Hearts. All of Square's RPGs do this.
I mean, to
not
be fair,
really,
no.
Lost Sphere doesn't do this. I Am Setsuna doesn't do this. Final Fantasy doesn't do this.
Also, it requires a bit of context, but I will mention this in a second. For now, we invite the goddess of life.
This is the goddess.
Boss, yes.
She's
The world with you doesn't do this.
Pay attention to the background, the floor in the background, because when the eclipse happened, the goddess basically shifts in power. Basically, she shifts in attack and everything. But I should be able to defeat her before it happens. But basically, it requires context. For example, Final Fantasy Tactics has this kind of thing of pretentious dialogue between each characters and gods and slaying demons and stuff like that. But it's built entirely around it. It's set in a more medieval, traditional medieval style, which means that characters normally talk with that, not necessarily the ye olde British language, but in a very serious and fitting tone for the matter. Again, in a case where context actually means anything. The usual pretensions for final boss in RPGs, yes, it has been a common thing since the old days, but like Pedro mentioned, it doesn't always happen, especially more recent times, Square is toned down big time on it.
So basically, the final boss of the game is Terrence Malick.
And we're done.
Essentially, though, yeah. To sum up what I meant with my comparison to Chronicles of Narnia, the thing is, like, with this game, sure, we've had plenty of dark moments, but we've had plenty of comedic moments, but it turns out all this is all within a world that's pretty much doomed. And
this is also one other thing, Jova, that turns me off big time for Narnia. One is in-your-face religious symbolism, which is very annoying, if at least from my point of view. But the other is basically this tomato in the mirror at the end. But anyway, we're about to get the ending. And it will have to you, Bleeps, because it's another Sproutling.
Oh yeah, you guys. So yeah, the mana goddess is pretty much dead. So now what?
Basically, we defeat her dark side.
Her dark side.
Yes.
So her
I'm
dark.
a Sproutling. I came here to heal the mana tree.
So where is her light side, if I may ask?
The one that you spoke at the beginning of the game, and this. So she embodies the mana tree itself. Oh, let's see what happens.
The mana tree calls. I gotta go.
Okay.
Where are you?
Go ahead, Joe.
The wind shall take thee.
She predicted. Also, Jennifer,
What could that possibly mean?
Oops. He sprouted. And even the ones back at my home. Basically, all Sproutling now will make the mana tree new once more.
So...
How lovely.
So again, though, shouldn't that mean that things reset? Like, I guess I'm just a bit confused. What's different this time?
Not in this case. Remember, this time my player character actually freed the Sproutling when he was trapped in the Dream Dimension by Nunuzak. Basically, remember, Nunuzak and Pokiel had that very pretentious discussion about the meaning of life and doing an action like forcing the cycle of time to repeat for the sake of maintaining the status quo.
So, essentially, it was told to us in a bout of offhand dialogue that...
And sadly now we get an FMV, which just like we mentioned at the beginning, it hasn't aged gracefully, sadly.
I don't know, I still think it looks fine.
Oh, but it's Square
It was
Product,
the year 2000.
I do believe it works better for 3D models, but for the sprite it's noticeable, the 480p quality. That's what's the way I want to see a potential HD remake with hand-drawn sprites on this game, just to see how it will fit on this. Say, for example, like this one in particular.
So we're seeing the Sproutlings do all this. So basically, essentially, because now what Nunozak allowed the Sproutling to join with the other Sproutlings, they basically had a risk or reward situation.
Remember, the Sproutling was trapped was the catalyst for making the mana tree born anew.
I get that now, although I'll admit that was not explained the best way, especially since all these Sproutlings look exactly the same.
Jova, it was also bearing that, like Pedro pointed out very clearly, that pretentious conversation Nunuzak and Pokiel had.
Not only that, but that was a conversation that seemed a bit offhanded and not really important to the plot until now.
Dude, you're walking in place. It's like you're meant to come over. The point is... Alright, so there you go, Till. Lightning Returns was actually referencing this game.
No, first we didn't defeat someone with the power of love, second we didn't got transferred to our Earth.
No, I'm talking about the retarded NPCs.
Anyway, go ahead, Dweebs.
Yep, we plans all get to our...
We see Nicolo doing stuff, also Inspector...
Everyone with soul always disappears. We don't have souls, so we always stay. The poet, whatever that guy is.
And also, we hear the Swedish stuff.
I also like, counting stars. There has to be.
Is this Apple Republic song, Counting Stars?
All the Sproutlings are gone. You should say the few to sell premium prices. Now what I'm supposed to do?
Well, I don't know. Don't you have plenty of other business venues to take care of?
Oh, Jova, you will see.
So basically, the One Republic song, Counting Stars, was inspired by the
I guess it seems you're supposed to give flowers to everyone. Oh, so you're telling him to be a flower merchant.
The weather and the seasons.
And there you go. That's how the game pretty much ends.
We're here only because we like staying here.
Nicolo buys my fucking house.
Nicolo! Where are we gonna live? We're the heroes of this story.
Alright. Alright, final thoughts.
Can I go first, since mine are always the smallest?
Hold on. Let me just say something relatively quickly as my sort of introduction to this. This has been a weird experience to everyone, and when I first played this game, I already mentioned some things that I experienced while playing this game for the first time. But I don't know, the art style and the music kind of sold me in Tarandetta, and also the gameplay was relatively fine on its own. But yeah, I can see why the story may be, unfinished and in some cases downright means be a fair story arc. But for others, like the Jumi story arc, I really appreciated enough. So, without said, I'll maybe add something at the end. Pedro, since you had the more experience, but you also have more contrasting thoughts.
Well, the first time I tried this game was back in the early 2000s because I was fortunately I had the fortune of being able to play PS1 imports to overcome the fact that this game never came to Europe. And I enjoyed it fine, but like I said, it never really left that much of a big an impression on me. The gameplay was fine, and the world was charming, and the music and visuals were great. It's just that I never really went back to it because I never really cared enough to. And I can see now why it didn't leave that much of an impression on me, because when this game is not being when the story is not being mean-spirited or just downright stupid, as we discussed over the course of this playthrough, a lot of it is just not that interesting to me. Like I said, there's a couple subplots that are fun, like the one in the boat, for example.
Yeah.
But I think the game suffers from a lack of good story ideas
and focus.
And focus. Yeah, that's the biggest problem with this game, the lack of focus. I think this game was way too. I think these developers tried to bite more than they could chew, because this game tries to be like this big sprawling epic where you literally. And to be fair, plenty of games can do that right. It's just that I don't think they had the. I just don't think they didn't have the skill to pull off a convincing world full of characters and make them all equally good, and that's why the game feels so unbalanced. And that's why there's such a inconsistent quality level in between the various arcs and storylines that we encounter. So it's kind of a sad, it's a noble failure of sorts in terms of the story for me. Mm-hmm. The gameplay is fine. Again, like Teo said, it plays more like a beat 'em up than a JRPG. But that's fine with me, because I mean, the Secret of Mana wasn't exactly the most traditional JRPG either, so I don't mind that. It's just that I don't think the gameplay does anything particularly outstanding to really make it stand out enough to warrant a full playthrough. But of course, the best thing about this game, like I already said, is of course the presentation. Shimomura's score is of course fantastic, and I still really appreciate everything about the visuals. Honestly, I can understand some people not liking the overly detailed stuff and the sprites and stuff like that, but to me, honestly, everything looks pretty much great. Like, this game is a PS1 visual wonder, if you ask me. So yeah, it's an interesting game. I don't think it's really all that much worth visiting nowadays, because it hasn't aged all that well.
Okay,
so,
oh, sorry.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Well, the music's nice and the graphics are good, but yeah, like you said, the stories really aren't that interesting, and what really grabs me the most is the pacing. It's really inconsistent. Some go by in a flash, some are really slow. It's not consistent at all. Also, some of the characters are either boring or annoying.
Yeah.
And
is there a particular story arc that you may prefer over the others?
None that really come to mind, I'm afraid. I guess the one we just finished, the last part, was the best one.
Ah, okay, so the Jumi one.
Yeah, that's about it for me. Again, I've never really played these kind of games that often.
Oh, and the Sproutling died, I guess.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, this commentary in and of itself was fun. The game, it's much more pretty to look at than it is to play, I'm afraid, from what I've seen. And
I'm sorry, John, I'm gonna have to interrupt you for just a second. Don't the Japanese have a word for ending?
Fin.
Why do you consistently have to resort to fin? Why? Don't you guys have your own word for ending?
I have no idea. Wait, what?
It's a video game. There'll be English words everywhere.
No, but Fiend is not English.
I know it's not. That's what I just said. It's not English.
But don't the Japanese have their own word for the end?
It's
I mean,
fancy, I guess.
Whatever. Go ahead, Jova.
Keep going, Jova.
Okay, yeah, this game is definitely a nice art project. I'll start by saying that the visuals are definitely top-notch for its time. The problem is that I get the feeling that they're focusing more on how they can make this look pretty than actually everything else, because the story...
Classic Square.
Okay, I'm just going to state off one of my big problems. What does the Monogatars exactly have to do with any of the plot lines? I mean, the way it's weird, I mean, look, I know that you can choose any of the 3 plot lines, and I guess maybe they didn't want to have it be too specific, but I think what kind of killed the finale for me is that the Monogatars doesn't even really feel too involved with the storylines. I mean...
Not just that, Jova, we didn't really needed this ending. We could have just end the game right at the end of a Jumi story arc, and it would have been fine. No sequel baiting, no real big fanfare, just simple closure.
It was a far more climactic ending. What we just
seriously. I mean, it's like they're trying to go for a downer ending where supposedly everyone doesn't live or die, but that still is not clear since apparently we were seeing an epilogue with everyone fine. So yeah, that's another thing. The story does not explain itself in the points where it counts the most, except from points in the Jumi arc. Yeah, I'm gonna be hands down, the Jumi arc was definitely my favorite of the story arcs. There were quite a few good side quests here and there, but the problem is...
the one with Gilbert, mostly, I take.
Again, a lot of the story's problems start with the fact that we have 3 different quote-unquote main storylines, whereas the Jumi arc should have been the one that was actually the focus, because that's the one that's best discussed, and the characters are the less dickish there. In fact, I didn't particularly really hate anyone in the Jumi arc, now that I think about it.
Well, maybe Alexandra, I guess.
Well, I mean, we're supposed to hate her, though. I mean, it wasn't like, say, the Fairy arc, where we're supposed to sympathize with them. And yeah, that's a thing. It's like, well, I mean... I find myself constantly teetering and tottering. Again, though, as a game... I complained a lot about how its biggest problem is its inconsistency, which is probably brought about by the lack of focus. Seriously, some quests are done in incredibly cryptic ways, others aren't. Some actually point you to the way you want to go, others will just leave you in the dust. It's a mess, and not in a coherent manner, which makes it frustrating. And I will admit, some of the little extra details are a bit frustrating too. Seriously, the Cactus Kids dialogue scene, some of them are funny, but others just feel inappropriate for the situation. Now, that's not necessarily a huge point against the game, but it's a little bit that doesn't help stuff, because, okay, for a game that has this many characters and this supposedly big a world, the game doesn't really seem to be interested in focusing on them, which is the main issue. It's like, yeah, we meet all these characters, but some barely get to do anything. Some feel like they end their appearances before their arcs are even properly completed, and it's kind of a shame, because, okay, I may like some of these characters, but if you don't really do anything with them, well, I feel empty. It's like, when it came to Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, at the very least, I felt that they got the most mileage that they could, for the most part, out of the characters without making them stale each and every now and then. But here, it's like, you'll be lucky if the characters you like return here and there, which is, again, a shame. And this is where I think my final judgment for this game is this. It's style over substance. It wasn't intended to be, but that's what it ended up being because of rush development or whatever. The music, the style, the artistics are really good, although even the artistics are so detailed that kind of works against them, as I stated before. But again, it's so great on the surface. And the gameplay itself is pretty fun. The problem, though, lies in how the story progression goes, and in this case, that really hurts the game because it's a JRPG, which, well, yeah. No matter how detailed or whatnot, no matter how much dialogue there may be in the story is still going to dictate, for the most part in a JRPG, how you progress, where you progress, what you have to do, and this or that, and any extra details. But yeah, the pacing alone of this game is kind of what sadly makes it a bit too outdated for my liking. I mean, I might give it a try, but the thing is that the final climaxes aren't even really that fulfilling, if I'm to be honest. I mean, again, some worked out better, like, I actually did like the pirate stuff, well, involving Gilbert anyway, that was funny. And yeah, the Jumi one did have a nice conclusion, and there were some quests, but again, the issue is like, well, it wasn't enough. And again, okay, out of 3 main quests, only one of them actually had me sympathizing with the characters from the get-go, and even then, there was a bit of confusion to get out of the way, because this game does not explain stuff the best. I mean, I'll give Kingdom Hearts credit. Yeah, people joke a lot about how its story is incohesive and incoherent, and it can be at times, but at the very least, with Kingdom Hearts, they do explain. I mean, yeah, it's incredibly weird and overly complex, but they do explain. Here, there are several big plot holes that are just... they kind of mess with my enjoyment.
I think it's different in the sense that Kingdom Hearts has a plot that they're trying to stick to, even though it's a bit askew at times. But with this game, it's like there is an overarching plot, but they shoehorn a bunch of other plots in at the same time.
Yes.
So it's a bit... nah.
Yeah,
like we said, lack of focus.
Again, look, if they weren't asking for us to care about these characters to this extent, you know, if they treated it like, say... if they treated it like Majora's Mask, it might have been more okay, because with Majora's Mask, although that game still did it better, with Majora's Mask, the game doesn't ask you to care for these people, it's that you have to go out of your way to actually do the side quest to care about these people, and then, yes, that's your reward for going there.
Aren't they assholes mostly? Or am I missing?
It varies with Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
The point here is, like, well, the problem is, like, well, this is like if you made side quests on Majora's Masks required, because that's what a lot of the quests feel like. Even if they're part of the main quest, sometimes they just feel like side quests, like they have little to no relation to it. Which is, again, the main issue with the finale at the end. The fact that, what's our beef with the Mana Goddess? Like, she literally just comes out of nowhere. And not in the sense like, oh, she's the villain behind the villain. It's like, no, she's apparently the person we have to kill, supposedly, and it's just not really explained well. Again. If this game were just focusing mainly on the Jumi stuff, I think that would have been a much better game. For its main quest, anyway. I've already said my piece about why I really don't care for the fairy arc, and how I was actually happy about what happened to Matilda. That's how bad a character she was. And with the Dragon Quest arc, yay, we're killing dragons who aren't really bad. Yeah, they survive, and I guess Lark will get to be with his sister sometime, but do we really have to be the Patses that much?
I guess.
But yeah, overall, this game is style over substance. If you're really into this sort of game, I would definitely say go ahead and play it. I will say, though, that if I were to give this game a try, I think I might wait for a remake that fixes things up gameplay-wise, because, again, at the end of the day, it's something with some fun gameplay, but if I'm not really intrigued in the world and story, it's kind of hard to keep myself interested in this game.
In a specific kind of game, anyway.
Yeah. Again, I won't say that it's a terrible game, it's just... it's aged badly, and yeah, it's very confused, like Pedro said. Style over substance, it's worth a look. But
this game
don't
should
be
have
surprised
just
if you find yourself putting it down.
This game should have just done what the previous Mana game did. Just pick a plot and stick with it for the most part, and that's basically it. Like I've said, the developers tried to do way too much and cram way too much stuff in this.
Yeah.
And because of that, they failed to give each of these plots could have made for like maybe an entire spin-off or something like that. Instead, they cram all this in. They should have just picked one story, maybe have a couple subplot here and there, but not have like an entire game full of subplots. Because of this, the game just feels like it doesn't have a proper focus. Like I
honestly have to wonder, was Legend
of
was the Mana series like on its last legs, and like they were trying to cram everything in because they thought they wouldn't get a chance or something? Like,
no, well, yes and no, Joe.
Yes
but
and no.
The Mana series has always been kind of like an acquired taste, similar to series like Star Ocean or Valkyrie Profile. The Mana series has been on the more niche part. Well, at this point, the two I mentioned were not part of Square Enix, but to give just a comparison, similar to, like, say, to the Saga franchise, this was born as a spin-off of Final Fantasy, but then became its own thing, and it was just its own thing. But compared to the other major big boys in the Square's library, it wasn't that much regarded. It's also one reason why this game was localized in America.
Kind of like how Persona started off as a spin-off branch of the main Shin Megami Tensei series, and eventually became its own thing. Even Persona 5 dropped the Shin Megami Tensei. Right?
Yeah, but like in that case, the Mana series did not overtook the original. So
Persona kind of.
Except, not really, the Shin Megami Tensei series is still going on, so I don't see what you mean.
Yeah,
there.
but
No, I mean in terms of popularity and reception.
The cool toys, you know.
Well, Theo, you can't choose what becomes popular.
But that's not the topic for today. The topic for today is this game, in a sense, drove a bad Mana series as being much more niche in that regard. Yeah, in a sense, but not all the people cared about it. Wasn't on its last legs by the time of this game. Essentially, this was another game in the franchise, and back in the day, remember, it was also in continuity with the others.
So it was their way of trying to draw in a bigger audience, I guess, or see what worked.
Probably this was just pure experimentation, and as you may guys have no doubt, it didn't actually work in the end. Yeah. Anyway, if you're done, Jova, just say Shira and I'll conclude.
Okay, Shira, you're up.
Okay, well, this game is very beautiful, at least. I love the art direction, and yeah, the sprites look a little clustered in the text boxes, but they look great. I mean, I know you said it was just a data log, and that was what it is, but it was nice getting to see the full-fledged designs. They looked really great. Yeah, very vibrant game.
You also have, for context, also one for the monsters. I just didn't show it.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think we already saw their full models anyway, since they get to be bigger.
Yeah, their sprites were more clear, at least, anyway.
Yeah.
The music is, well, not really much to say, honestly. It's fantastic. The story, I've said it several times, I wish they would have gone for a more slice of life or quest-based game rather than having an overarching plot, because it got drowned out by everything else to the point where it might as well have just been a mini quest in and of itself. I mean, we mentioned it last part, but the Jumi story arc is probably one of the better ones, because we actually spent probably more time with that one than we did with the actual plot. Like you said, it's just a complete lack of focus, and, well, it suffered to an extent because of that. But apart from that, I mean, the gameplay is fine. Like, not great, but fine. And, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Also,
on the subject of... Oh, yes?
Also, all the Steven Universe foreshadowing.
Yes, unavoidable.
I have no doubt in my mind that Rebecca or somebody on the team played this game.
Like, dang.
Sorry, that's a pretty big freaking coincidence if no one in the Cruniverse has played this.
The similarities are astronomical.
Do you have preferred story arcs over the other? I guess the Jumi
I mentioned the Jumi one. I did enjoy that one. Although, one thing I forgot to mention with the story was I'm somebody who really likes grey morality stories, but, you know, usually you know what the grey morality is. In this game, it's very ambiguous who's the bigger asshole.
Not in a good way.
Especially in the fairy story arc.
Because the thing is, the characters in this game, they're either assholes or just fine. So it's really hard to find the lesser of two evils in stories that don't actually explain what those are. It's like, will you help us, yes or no?
That actually does remind me. It's like, well,
if I help you, will that lead to a lot of people dying? I don't know.
That actually does remind me. One thing about the Jumi arc, it's definitely the best story, I think, but I will say there, though, the grey morality there is, to me, the weakest, because, honestly, all Sandra literally has going for is that,
we don't even know what it is half the time. That's
what
I'm saying.
Yeah, that too. And literally, all we have going for Sandra is, she's trying to protect Farina, even though we managed to accomplish that, and all she was just doing was just killing her own race. So, I mean, while that's the best storyline, if they were trying to go for grey morality, no.
And the fairies were just awful. Just awful.
I'd say the best story that was doing grey morality was the dragon one, even though I had my problems with that. Anyway, back to you,
Even
Shorai.
then, Lark motivation is kind of like...
selfish.
Anyway, yeah, keep going, sure.
Well, that was it, really. I mean, like Jova said, beautiful artistic game, but story-wise, especially in this kind of game where the story is supposed to be quite prominent, it definitely falls flat for that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, before actually concluding, let me just add a couple of things. First thing first, like I briefly mentioned in some other parts, there is a new game plus in this game. Essentially, you can replay over and over. It's made on purpose in case you have like done only a part of the quest, like a single story arc, and then decide to go directly to the mana tree. But that new game plus can unlock you what is called Nightmare Mode. What it is, the game literally passes from the super easy mode to essentially ultra violence, if you know what I mean. If you play Doom, you know exactly what I mean. Like, it spikes big time. And for an imagine this applied to boss fight like Tropicalo, you know, that the one with the insta kill move. That's a nightmare, properly named. But anyway, it's, at the end of the day, I kind of agree. It's similar in a situation to Nier. This game needs to be, I honestly think that this game needs to be more known to the public, just in order to formulate an opinion on it, and in order to also backtrack to the supposed origin of Shimomura's particular personal style of music.
However, in this case,
however, hold on, Jova, let me just say this. However, it needs a better way to reintroduce itself to a new audience. Like, I'm not even sure if a proper remake would actually give it justice. I'd say reboot it entirely, in a sense, but keep only a couple of the elements, but build something new. And as I mentioned,
it just be a different game then?
No, technically, if you follow the same plot basic, but you just present it in a different way.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, this game sells itself on the mobile market. You need a mobile game that has this structure. Like, Square Enix can do wonders with this kind of thing. I can attest to you, Square Enix nowadays, we're far past the point where they had with all the bravest. They have improved with the mobile games market. So if they can pull, they actually have the capabilities of pulling a mobile game with this kind of formula and actually improving things up. So that can happen. But since I played also the game, I will be fine if it gets like not proper HD, but in a sense of being more polished port, in a sense that it gets the backgrounds and the sprite a bit more, you know, better, and maybe with like a trophy system or achievements, whatever system is released for. But my point being, this game needs to be essentially known more in some form of capacity to the public in any way or the other. I'm fine either way. And that was, as I mentioned, kind of the purpose of this playthrough in the first place, actually, to letting you know, well, Pedro notwithstanding, what this game was about and how it is.
If I'm totally honest too, the main reason why this game seems to be forgotten is because it, like I've said, it fails to make an impression. Like, maybe if the game was more memorable, then it would be better. No, see, the thing is, here's the thing. Unlike what you may think, the game's falling into obscurity is not always the public's fault. Sometimes it's the game's fault.
If I'm to be honest, the only thing I really consider memorable about this game outside of the Jumi arc is the way you can do things your own way. Until then I realized that, oh, you're still going to have to do things a specific way here and there. But again, though, I will admit the main thing I would take away from this game is that, oh, you can literally create a world. And you know, you can actually customize how the world will go. And the thing is, like, well, there are other games that sort of just are similar to that, but yeah, that's the thing, though. With this game, that's the thing I'm taking away the most from. And again, that's not to diss this game, and I do think that there are some characters with potential, but I'm gonna be quite honest. The game tried, but failed to make the characters memorable. I mean, and that's where it gets to at the base of things. If the characters on a whole were more memorable, I'd definitely be into this game. That's sort of why I really like Nier. Like, Nier had a great story. It had problems, yes, but the characters we got to know were memorable. And
yeah,
also
that's the thing.
Nier plot was consistent in the game enough that doing all the side stuff was fine and didn't
Nier was a case of bad marketing, not so much the game itself. Whereas this game, granted, maybe this game probably didn't have the best marketing either. I don't remember how it was. But at the same time, the game is not exactly the one that would... it doesn't make that strong of an impression. It didn't for me. And I'm the kind of guy who loves these kinds of games.
Anyway, all right. I think we'd prolong this enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, see you for the next mana game that we'll handle.
Yeah, probably the first one. We're not sure yet. See ya.